Hi, Susan. Thanks for coming on today.
Hi, Jason. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to meet you because your reputation has preceded you for years.
Oh my goodness, Susan.
Yeah, Sandy Lundy. That's all I heard was Jason, Jason, Jason.
Susan, I know you obviously have a lot of criminal defense background. You also have DCF background. You do appeals in those types of cases. But in terms of the overlay between the two, you have police who gets called to a situation. There's children in the household. Typically, DCF will get called because there's a child there. What happens in that process in terms of the investigation of the DCF piece? Because on the criminal defense side, we obviously know what happens with the courts, but what happens with DCF in terms of like, how does that piece work?
Okay, so first of all, anybody who reports to DCF, not the police, are anonymous, supposedly, but you can always sort of figure it out. I'm talking attorney to attorney. You can figure it out. I do DCF appeals, and I didn't start doing it. It grew out of my work with family violence and domestic violence. Many times, DCF will be called for reasons that are not legit. The husband abused, the husband this, the husband that, and then there's a file is open and there's an investigation. DCF has a couple of days to do the initial investigation. Then you get a report. And if they find abuse or neglect, those are the two things that DCF looks at. And then the case is open. And it's open for a while. But the person who is being accused has the right to appeal. There are interim appeals and a final appeal. I get in.
Before we get to that, this is all great information, but just for the viewer's sake, just before we even get to that. So are you saying that all it takes for the DCF to get involved is just for someone to make it an allegation of it? That's all they're required?
They'll do an initial investigation and they'll either substantiate or unsubstantiate or dismiss. And if it's substantiated, then the full investigation goes forward. So anybody could do it. I could make an allegation about you. Well, Jason, blah, 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 blah. I could call DCF, his kids. The teacher could do it. And there are mandated reporters, those who the law requires they have to report, even if you don't believe it. And DCF, Division of Child and Family Services, I understand they're overworked, they're underpaid. But really and Governor Baker tried to clean it up because there were so many mistakes and so many things that went wrong. But quite frankly, we haven't gotten there yet. And when it comes to domestic violence, they're not really that well trained. They don't have the time and they don't have the sort of eyes to look into a case deeply. And also people are afraid to say, there wasn't abuse. There wasn't neglect. They'd rather go forward with the investigation and protect themselves, quite frankly. So sometimes there are people, I've had many cases where the person who was accused is totally innocent. And DCF was used as a shield or as a weapon in a divorce case, in a custody case, in a criminal case.
Let's talk about that, Susan. So, I mean, this is like the back of your hand. So I'm sure a lot of this like useful information for our listeners is just something that you're going over pretty quickly. So I just want to circle back to that. So an allegation is made by anyone. I mean, can it technically be made by an abuser just for an advantage against the victim, right?
Exactly.
So from there, you said there was another stage that happens, kind of like the pre-investigation stage. What are they doing during this pre-investigation stage?
They try to substantiate whether they should go forward with a full investigation, and they have 2 days to do it. They interview witnesses, they interview, and everything, I just want to say, everything's anonymous, supposedly. The person who makes the allegation, so the name never appears on the report. And then they write a report that the person being accused will receive, and it will say allegation of abuse substantiated, allegation of abuse not substantiated.
But what you were saying before, though, Susan, you were saying that they're kind of erring on the side of caution to substantiate these claims. So what can a person do if it's a he says, she says type of situation? They're the victim in the situation. What can they say to DCF, or what can they do to essentially have it unsubstantiated in that situation?
Well, one of the things during the 2-day period, and then after that, if it goes forward, is DCF will want to meet with the alleged perpetrator. My advice to my clients is do not meet with them without an attorney. Some of the DCF workers do not like attorney intervention. And I always, when it's me, I always get the name of the person who's coming. I call and I'm very deferential and respectful and ask, is it all right if I appear with my client? Because I think it would be in everybody's interest for me to be there. And usually the DCF worker says, fine. And I establish a relationship with the DCF worker. Then there's the interview with the client, and I prepare my client for the kinds of questions. If they're coming to the house, where I want the house neat, I want the house clean, if there are other children there, I want them dressed appropriately, I want everything in order. I'm going to give you a war story. I had a horrendous case, 6 kids, all the ex-husband filed an abuse allegation against the mom on all 6 kids. None of it was true. One thing did happen. They lived in a house over here near St. Elizabeth's Hospital, and one of the screens was loose. It was 2 feet off the ground, Jason. One of the little ones got up on the couch, pushed the screen, and fell out. Nothing happened. There were lots of soft bushes, not prickly bushes. Lo and behold, the husband went ballistic. The DCF worker came, and they did find not abuse, but neglect. So we had to go through a whole investigation. They did substantiate neglect, and then I appealed it, and I explained, we went through the appeal, we had a fair hearing, and I know I'm jumping around. A fair hearing I will get into in another time, but that's basically, it's not really, it's like going before a judge, but this time it's an administrative person, usually a lawyer, and we had a fair hearing, and when we explained the motivation and the dynamics of what was going on in this family, we got it reversed. But that took almost 2 years. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's so many questions that kind of come up during this thing. So do they also talk to the kids during this process?
Yes. And that's the one thing I do not do. I don't prep the children because, kids are kids, God bless them. You never know. Are they going to remember what we went over? No. Are they going to mix it up? Yes. So it's better for them just to be themselves. And so when they talk to the kids, I always make sure that the other children aren't around. And sometimes they want to talk to the kid alone. I won't allow that, particularly if it's a minor. I just won't allow it. They have the right to have the parent there. As you know, in juvenile court, parents are involved. Yes. They come to court. And I want the same thing with DCF. So yeah, they try to talk to everybody. They'll talk to the pediatrician. They'll talk to if there's a preschool teacher, if there's an aunt, if somebody else lives in the house, which I think is good. I want them talking to as many people as possible if it's a false allegation. If it's true, I don't want them talking to anybody.
But they only have 2 days to speak to all these witnesses, you're saying?
And they don't get to all of them to make their initial report. And usually they go forward with the cases, particularly now after all of the mishaps, and because Governor Baker was so adamant about cleaning up DCF. I think it's like judges with restraining orders. Even today, I have found judges are reluctant not to issue a restraining order, even if in their heart they know it shouldn't be issued, because they want to protect themselves and the potential victim. And I sort of understand that. I'm not a judge. As a defense attorney, I don't like it. But I don't know that I would have the courage to say no, because you never know. The Globe's here. That's really what it comes down to. And it's the same with DCF. So the investigation will go forward. The alleged perpetrator has the right to submit all kinds of documents, evidence, discovery, etc. And within 30 days, you ask for a hearing. You ask for a fair hearing in writing. And it has to be sent to the location where the allegation was made. That's really, really important.
Okay. So Susan, I really appreciate you coming on today and talking about this whole thing during the first step of the DCF hearings or investigation. Certainly want you to come back to talk about the fair hearings next time. But tell us about you. Tell us about your practice. When should someone be calling you to hire you to represent them?
Well, I started out as a sixth grade teacher. I then became a college professor for the Greek Orthodox Church. I trained teachers all over the world. And then the Archbishop said, you have to get a PhD. And I said, why? But you don't argue with the Archbishop. He said, you'll go to Harvard. I said, no, I won't. He said, why? I said, traffic. You don't say no to the Archbishop. So I went to Boston College and loved it. And then the liberal arts college basically closed. It was Hellenic College. It's open now, but not my field. So our legal counsel said, go to law school. You have this, that, you're a Fulbright scholar. So I went to law school, got into BC, but decided, nope, I'm going to go to Suffolk because Suffolk professors at that time sort of had some influence on the questions. And I knew I had to get in and get out and pass first time. I became a defense attorney because at first I thought I wanted to be a prosecutor, but I had an interview and they said, would you have any problem putting pregnant women in jail who are addicts? And I looked at it, I said, of course. They need treatment, not jail. And then I walked out of it. I said, nope, this is not for me. I have to go defense. I became a defense attorney. I had 3 bar advocate courts, when you know what that is.
Nice.
Chelsea, the old Chelsea court. There wasn't even a ladies' room. Boston Municipal Court, baptism by fire, and Brookline, which was the Ritz-Carlton. And my office is in Brookline. So I did that for a number of years, and I was in second session of Boston Municipal Court. I defended ladies of the evening, and I did that for a year, and someone approached me and said, Susan, would you take a case nobody's interested in? There are 8 women in Framingham who defended their lives. They're there either for murdering their batterers or defending their life. And I said, I'll look into it. I'd never been to a prison in my life. I'm a little bit of a princess. I went out to Framingham prison, dressed to the hilt. It was 100 degrees, no air conditioning. And I was introduced to an inmate, Eugenia Moore. Eugenia Moore was an MBTA bus driver who defended her life against her batterer. She was given a life sentence because the judge in the court would not allow anything to be introduced about domestic violence. This is back in the day. I wasn't the trial attorney.
Wow.
So I said, you know what, I'm going to take the case. At first, Eugenia looked at me, and she's gorgeous, this beautiful woman, thinking, who is this white woman who's coming in here and thinks she can help me? And I thought to myself, boy, this is not going to work. I could just feel the vibes. And then she held out her hand and she gave me a sour ball. I don't know if you've ever had those candies. My father used to bring Fireball, used to bring them home. And I grabbed one and she was shocked. She says, nobody likes these candies. I said, well, this was a special treat for my dad. And that broke the ice. So I became Eugenia Moore's commutation attorney. I had help. And it took 2.5 years of my pro bono life. And we got her sentence commuted to time served. And 21 years on parole, 3 parole hearings. That was not fun. And she's finally off of parole. So I've stayed defense. I became a domestic violence, family violence attorney, and I've loved it. As a result of that case, I was a commentator. I won't tell you what channel because I'm embarrassed, on national TV. I'll tell you, it was Fox in those days. Oh. And somebody came up to me and said, have you heard about Mary Kay Letourneau, the Seattle school teacher? And I said, I had seen it. I said, sort of. Well, she's interested in hiring you to defend her. She was in prison. She's the one who had an affair with a student, and she had 2 children by the student, and then they got married. I said, well, because I was a school teacher, I was interested. I said, I'll fly out and meet her. I'd never been to Washington. I flew out. I went to Gig Harbor. That was another issue. And I met her, and I knew that I was going to take the case because the first thing she said to me, she had 4 children by her husband. She said, I used to hear their every breath, and I always broke down in tears. And I don't cry, Jason. I don't cry at all. And so I took the case. I was her attorney for 10 years. We got her out of prison. We got her married. We got married to the young man. They had 2 gorgeous children. The family blended. And then I was off. So that's basically what I do. Family violence. I do some discrimination work, which is sort of a breath of fresh air for me, because I know if I'm at the Mass Commission Against Discrimination, nobody's going to be wearing orange. The worst that can happen, they're going to have to pay some money. And so basically, family violence, I'm doing trafficking. I've done a number of trafficking cases, elder abuse. That's the most underreported abuse, I think, that we have in our society. So that's what I do in a nutshell.
Thank you for coming on today. Let's have you back again soon.
Thank you, Jason. Stay safe and stay dry. Bye.